So that's it. The investigation into the massacre of 4 Americans in Benghazi is over. We now have all the answers. The Accountability Review Board, commissioned by Hillary Clinton, has released its findings. First of all, there was no protest. And although security was grossly lacking, it's a systemic fault. It's no one in particular's fault. It's everyone's fault. Although it really might be Ambassador Chris Stevens' fault. And so it goes in Washington. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. From the beginning, the shouting by the White House about a protest in that despicable video, there were whispers about Chris Stevens himself being somehow responsible.
They had a mission, and they believed in it. They knew the danger, and they accepted it.
Chris understood that diplomats must operate in many places where soldiers do not, where there are no other boots on the ground, and security is far from guaranteed.
Really? Ambassador Stevens was not in the military. He was a civilian diplomat. The board also found that Ambassador Stevens made the decision himself to travel to Benghazi independently of Washington, and they wrote he did so with minimum close protection security. They not only write that his plans were not adequate, but they then say that as the president's personal representative, the chief of the mission here, Ambassador Stevens, bears direct and full responsibility for the security of the mission and all personnel. So let me see. So it's all his responsibility, and yet you don't give him the security that he repeatedly requested. It's a classic defense move. When the facts are against you, in this case, the White House, you blame the victim. By assigning blame or responsibility to the victim, you take the onus and the attention off of those responsible. And yet, amazingly, the report finds security was grossly inadequate. And as for reliance on the local Libyan militia, they go on to say, the ambassador did not see a direct threat of an attack of this nature and scale on the mission. Are you kidding? The consulate was attacked twice in the months prior to 9/11. Everyone there was getting danger pay. The jihadists had threatened on Facebook to kill our ambassador. Our ambassador warned Washington in a cable less than 4 weeks earlier that security was, quote, trending negatively, that the militia, this Libyan militia, had been infiltrated by extremists, and there were 10 al-Qaeda training camps in Benghazi. He himself said that they couldn't possibly sustain an organized attack. Now, the Libyan militia infiltrated by extremists. This is the militia that we relied on, but they stopped accompanying us in the weeks and months prior to September 11th. Do you know why? They were protesting their salary and working hours. Maybe they should take a page out of the Michigan Union members' playbook. And by the way, has anyone thought about the fact that local Islamist militiamen assigned by the host country to protect us live under the law of Sharia, which requires that they are punished by death if they kill an Islamist in protecting an infidel? So instead of beefing up security, the State Department lowers it. Why?
Sir, we had the correct number of assets in Benghazi at the time of 9/11 for what had been agreed upon.
What was she smoking? The report found they didn't even have fire extinguishers, and this obviously impacted the ambassador and Sean Smith's ability to escape. And yet the panel says this about Chris Stevens. His expertise on Benghazi in particular caused Washington to give unusual deference to his judgments. Really? Then why did he never get the help he asked for? But when his remains are returned to the United States, Hillary honors him after he dies, but never gave him the help he needed before he died.
I was honored to know Ambassador Chris Stevens. I want to thank his parents and siblings who are here today for sharing Chris with us and with our country. What a wonderful gift you gave us.
But the report says there's really confusion as to who's ultimately responsible and empowered to make decisions. Really? You don't know who's responsible?
I'm in charge of the State Department, 60,000 plus people all over the world.
If Senator McCain and Senator Graham and others want to go after somebody, they should go after me.
I guess not. They said no single individual is responsible, no disciplinary action is recommended. But the wording of the report is, quote, there is no basis to believe anyone breached his or her duty. Now, there's a fundamental concept in law that if you are negligent in the oversight of those in your charge, you are liable for consequences. Here, security was grossly inadequate, and there were consequences. But they conclude there's no basis to believe anyone breached their duty. Will there be consequences? It appears not. And so it goes. Another Accountability Review Board report to be filed alongside the report from 1999 after American diplomats were killed in Kenya and Tanzania, whose recommendations were also ignored. Which report had already recommended the changes that, had the State Department implemented them, might have saved the lives of 4 innocent Americans butchered in Benghazi. And of course, this week, the board report was presented to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And on the phone with us this evening is Oklahoma Senator Jim Inhofe. Jim is on that committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Nice to be with you, Judge.
All right, it's great to have you here. Now, you were on the committee that heard from Hillary's 2 deputies regarding the recommendations of the report, and you think that the report should be dismissed. Why is that?
Well, first of all, you said it, but you weren't specific. In April, the terrorists, we believe, Al-Qaeda terrorists, and they know that's true now, they threw an IED in our consulate and did the same thing in May to the Red Cross. Of course, they got out of town after that. Then they did the same thing to the British ambassador. They left town. Then again in June. Now, keep in mind, that was April and then June that the terrorists threw an IED at the U.S. consulate. In June, Ambassador Stevens warned the White House of the presence of Al-Qaeda. He talks about the flags that they're flying down there. And in August, Ambassador Stevens, he warned the White House that Al-Qaeda had training camps in Benghazi. And in September 4th, he told the White House that we're going to declare a state of maximum alert. And then listen to this now, Judge, because on September 9th, Ambassador Stevens called the White House for additional security, and nothing happened. Now, I've named 8 things. I could name 12, but there isn't time. The White House report came out and said, quote, no immediate specific warning existed before 9/11 attack. I mean, I can remember just 3 days ago that I had those before us in this committee hearing, and I said, you guys saying that isn't warning enough? Well, that wasn't specific. It was specific. And then I think when the cover-up really started was when the CIA report came out, and that was Petraeus. He told the White House, the Situation Room, he gave a document that said, quote, Al-Qaeda terrorist attack. Well, the White House deleted the word Al-Qaeda and terrorist. And now, you would think, wouldn't you, Judge, that if you're only talking about maybe 7 people in the Situation Room in the White House, that they would know who changed it. But everyone's denying knowing who changed it. And so they sent Susan Rice to the 5 stations to say a video caused the attack. I mean, that's their classic cover-up.
Well, yes, and Senator, so there is a chance that we will hear from Hillary Clinton before the middle of January. Do you believe that?
Well, if we do, I'll tell you what's going to happen. See, these 2 hearings that they've had, that John Kerry had, they don't talk about this. They don't talk about who changed this, who was involved in the cover-up, and what was the motive. We know what the motive was. It's before the election. And Obama had been saying that he's done away with Al-Qaeda. Well, positively, this was Al-Qaeda. So I specifically asked the questions, and they wouldn't answer them. I think you have those in writing down there when I asked him to be specific. And, I have made a study of different cover-ups, the Pentagon Papers, Watergate, and Iran-Contra. I've never seen anything. I think this is probably the greatest cover-up in my memory, anyway.
All right, Senator Inhofe, hopefully we will get more specific answers, and we thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Judge. Go get him.
All right. They call it the Accountability Review Board, but exactly who is accountable? With me now is former federal judge and United States Attorney General, for whom I've always had a great deal of respect, Michael Mukasey. All right, Judge, how are you this evening?
Good to see you, Judge. I'm very well, thanks.
Thanks for being with us this evening. Now, according to this report, no one breached their duty, no one's responsible, there's no identification of anyone responsible for a failure. The only person identified as making any decision is the ambassador. What does that tell you?
Tells me that somebody deeply doesn't really want to discuss who's responsible. I mean, what this report says, in essence, is, yeah, mistakes were made, but nobody who's still alive made them. And that doesn't sound like a reasonable conclusion to me.
And, you know, Judge, one of the things that I was, very taken by was the wording, quote, no one breached his or her duty. That sounded very legalistic to me. And I wonder, given the fact that the government generally has immunity, because the king can do no wrong, which means you can't sue the government and make money, that now we have this Federal Tort Claims Act. Are they anticipating some lawsuits that they would use such specific language like that?
I don't know that it's a matter of anticipating lawsuits so much as it is a desire to avoid putting any particular person on the line. I find it, though, very interesting that the people who testified before Congress said that these requests for assistance were read by people, quote, on the 7th floor. Well, that happens to be where the Secretary of State sits. And notably, this committee, this Accountability Review Board, didn't talk to the Secretary of State.
Well, and that's interesting, too, because they thanked the FBI for their cooperation, but they never really thanked Hillary. And, of course, she is unavailable because she had this concussion. But what about the fact that the failures within the State Department leadership only go so far up? How can they make a decision if they haven't heard from the Secretary of State? How could they conclude and make their findings?
They can't possibly. They can't possibly decide that it stops at a particular point unless they've interviewed people who supervise the people at that particular point. And they didn't go above the heads of the two departments who they say didn't function properly.
All right. We're going to have Attorney General Mukasey stay with us.